out of the house now, old man!
My son, the person you chose has erased everything that belonged to you.
This house belongs to the old man.
No! This house is mine.
My daughter is gone. I don't owe you anymore.
I'll never forget that morning. 48 hours after we buried Emily, the air in the house on Willow Creek Road still smelled of funeral flowers, candles, and incense smoke from unopened photos. Dim light filtered through the curtains, touching my daughter's framed photo, her smile still radiant, as if no time had passed. I sat in the kitchen, dressed in my morning suit, my tie loose, my coffee cold beside me. Then, footsteps behind me, leather shoes, firm and cold. "Arthur, we need to talk." It was Dylan, my son-in-law. His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was reading a work bulletin. I thought he wanted to talk about the funeral, about scattering Emily's ashes in Lake Travis, like she had wanted. But instead of flowers and tears, he put a piece of paper on the table. Thick, white, with black borders, bold letters at the top. "Notice to vacate, 30 days. I looked up. "What is this?" Dylan didn't even look at me, his eyes glued to his phone. "I think it's time for you to move. This house is too big for an old man to live alone. I need some space to start over." Start over. 2 days after burying my daughter, he wanted to start over. "What about me?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "There's a good nursing home on Lamar," he said. "Sunset Grove. It's convenient. Great care. Only $2,100 a month." I looked at him, still standing straight. Tie perfect. Eyes cold as glass. $2,100? I laughed, my voice cracking. "You think my pension is enough?" "You've lived here rent-free for 7 years," he said, not looking up. "Most people would call that kindness." Kindness. The word fell on the wooden table, like the sound of a dry branch breaking. I tried to calm myself. "Emily wanted me to stay. This is her home, where she grew up." Dylan looked up for the first time, and in his blue eyes, I saw something colder and more cruel than pain. "Emily is gone," he said. "This house belongs to me now." A chill ran down my spine, not because of the room, but because of his voice. There was nothing left of the man who had promised to love my daughter forever. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my skin until they bled. "You really want to evict me? 2 days after burying your wife?" "Don't overdo it," he said, pocketing his phone. "I'm just being realistic. I have bills to pay, insurance, property taxes." "Property taxes?" I interrupted, voice shaking. "Have you ever paid that before?" He was silent, then shrugged. "Emily handled everything. Now that she's gone, I have to control everything." Control. A simple word, but it carried the weight of possession. I looked around the kitchen, every brick, every crack in the countertop, all my work, my hands. I remembered the first day the frame of this house went up. Emily, 9 years old, running in the yard with her little hard hat. "Daddy, our house is so beautiful," her voice still echoed. Now, that house was about to be taken away from me by the man I once called son-in-law. I stood up. "Dylan, this isn't how Emily wanted it." He glanced at his watch. "Maybe, but Emily isn't here to protest." The words hit me, like a punch in the chest. I said nothing more. He left the kitchen. The front door closed, heavily, behind him. I sat down, my back hunched, as if I'd aged 10 years in 1 minute. Outside, the wind blew from Willow Creek Hill, carrying the soft chime Emily had hung. Each jingle was like a daughter whispering, "Daddy, don't let them take our home." I looked at the notice to vacate on the table. The ink still smelled of fresh printing. I picked it up, my hand shaking, but my eyes were no longer wet. They were drying, hardening. An image flashed through my mind. The old safe in the basement. Inside, Silvercrest Holdings documents, deeds, property tax receipts. I had stayed silent for years to keep Emily at peace, to let Dylan keep his pride. But now, my child was gone, and silence had no reason to exist. I folded the paper neatly, slipped it into my jacket pocket, and looked around the kitchen one last time. There was Emily's favorite sugar jar on the shelf, and the world's best dad mug she gave me back in 2010. My palm trembled as I touched it. Then, I let it fall. My voice was hoarse in the empty room. They took my daughter. They won't take her home. As the sun set behind Willow Creek Hill, darkness swallowed the house, and it was then that I understood. Silence has its own sound. After Dylan left, I didn't have the courage to stay in Emily's room. Every photo, every cup she used, was like a knife cutting into my memory. So I went down to the garage, the only place in the house he hadn't touched. The streetlights shone through the cracks in the door, illuminating the old paint cans and tools I once used to build this house with my own hands. Now, they were all rusted, cold, and ashen. The rain outside was falling steadily, tapping on the tin roof, as if someone was counting the time. I opened the wooden box and took out my pension envelope, $1,487, with a few loose bills from my wallet. It was enough to last 3 weeks. 3 weeks before I became homeless, in the very city where I had built bridges, poured concrete, and built neighborhoods. A hoarse laugh escaped me, not knowing if it was bitter or mad. Years of holding blueprints, calculating every number to give people a place to live. And now, I sat here, huddled between the 4 walls of the garage, not knowing where I would sleep next month. I reached for the white ceramic urn on the shelf, Emily's ashes. My hand shook, and my fingers slid lightly over the inscription. Beloved daughter, 1992-2026. My child. My voice was hoarse, almost a whisper. The man you chose erased everything about you. Your name, your memories, the house where you used to laugh every morning. I kept quiet because you wanted me to. But now, you see, he chased me away. Lightning flashed outside, its light cutting through the crack in the door, making the urn glint in reflection, like Emily's eyes staring back at me. In that moment, my throat tightened. I sat down on the cold concrete floor, my back against the wall, staring at the cracked ceiling. The wind that blew through the door smelled of mold, mixed with old paint and gasoline. The scent of years I had sweated to build this house. And now, this place was my temporary shelter, the rightful owner of the house, evicted by the man named Rhodes. I smiled softly. This world has a strange way of testing people. Every second, I felt myself sinking deeper into that cellar. Not just the darkness outside, but the darkness inside. The kind that makes a once strong man start to doubt his own worth. I thought, maybe Dylan is right. Maybe I'm just a stubborn old man, clinging to the bricks of the past. Then I looked around. The old hammer, the rusty wrenches, the still glow laser measure. All of it seemed to be looking back at me, saying, "No, you're not weak. You're just hurting." I placed Emily's urn on the table and lit a small candle. The dim light fell on her photograph. She was smiling, the same smile, the same light. I heard her voice in my head. "Dad, I believe in you." A tear fell on the wooden table, melted, and mixed with the candle wax. I didn't know if I was crying because I missed my child, or because I was ashamed of letting someone trample my pride for so long. I whispered softly, my voice trembling like the wind. "You once said that kindness is the best legacy, but if kindness has no limits, is it still a good thing?" I looked up and saw the notice to vacate still lying on the table, smeared with rain. The ink was running, like a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. Outside, thunder rumbled. A strong wind blew through, shaking the garage door, and the candle went out. Darkness engulfed the room. In that darkness, I had only two things left: my daughter's ashes and the burning determination in my chest. I whispered, as if promising myself, "Okay, Dylan, you want to start over? Dad will start over too, but in a way you never imagined." The camera slowly pulls back, leaving Arthur sitting alone, the streetlights reflecting off the garage window, like tears streaming down his face. The wind howls, the rain beats, and a silent question echoes in his head. A question addressed to the viewer. If it were you, standing between loss and humiliation like Arthur, what would you choose? A. Leave in silence to keep the peace. B. Stand up, find justice for yourself. Or C. Forgive, but not forget. That night, in the garage, was just the beginning. The next morning, as I walked up the stairs, thinking I would have another day of peace, the front door opened with a peal of laughter. A young, unfamiliar female voice echoed through the house that had once been a sanctuary of memory. "Oh my God, Dylan, the place is huge!" I stopped. The voice wasn't Emily's. It was Dylan's new girlfriend, Samantha. She stood in the middle of the living room, her heels still muddy, her eyes scanning everything as if she were choosing a new curtain color. Dylan opened the closet and smiled. "I told you, you'll like this place. It just needs a little updating. Old stuff smells like old people." The smell of old people. I heard every word. Emily's wedding photo was still on the table. My daughter, in a white dress, her eyes bright with anticipation. Samantha picked up the photo, frowning. "Who is this?" Dylan didn't hesitate. "My ex. She's gone, and you're trying to forget." I stood in the doorway, my voice choked. Not my ex-wife. My daughter. They both turned. Samantha was taken aback, and Dylan just shrugged. "You're still here? I thought you moved down to the garage to get used to it." I stepped forward, trying to keep my voice calm. "I haven't gone anywhere. This is still my house. He sneered. My house, Arthur. The papers are in my name. Don't forget. Then he calmly picked up Emily's framed photo, the one taken on her 30th birthday, and threw it into the black plastic bin. The sound of breaking glass was deafening. I will never forget that sound. I rushed forward, my voice trembling. Are you crazy? That's her keepsake. Samantha stepped back, startled, while Dylan was cold as stone. She needs new space. You and I don't want a house full of dead past. Do you understand? Understand? I roared. You are erasing the memories of the person who loved you with all her life. He approached, his smile arrogant. You are just a lodger, Arthur. Don't forget that. I was kind enough to let you stay for 7 years. Now, I'm tired. I stepped back, my back hitting the cupboard. Living? My voice was choked with pain and anger. You call me paying the bills, fixing the roof, tending the garden. Living? He shrugged, as if I had just told a joke. Then turned to Samantha. Take out those picture frames, too. I'll hire someone to clean them up this afternoon. The girl nodded, gathered up a pile of frames and boxes of Emily's mementos, and dropped them all into the green trash can in the yard. The Texas wind blew hard, carrying a few photos. 5-year-old Emily in a princess dress, smiling next to a birthday cake. I ran out and picked them up, my hands covered in dust and sand. When I looked up, Dylan was standing on the steps, looking down at me, like a benefactor. You look miserable, Arthur. In his eyes, I saw the light that only those who have never known pain possess, pure contempt. I stood up, my knees bleeding, blood seeping through my gray trousers, dripping to the ground. You will regret this day, I said, my voice low, trembling but firm. He smiled faintly. Regret? You no longer have the right to make anyone regret. You are just Emily's past, and the past should be cleared away. Those words were like a stab to me. My heart ached so much that I had to hold on to the pillar to keep from falling. But in that pain, something else began to awaken. The camera zooms in. My hands are clenched, my knuckles white. Blood runs from my knees, seeping into the cracks in the cement floor, like an oath written in blood. My eyes gradually changed. No more trembling, no more pleading. Just cold and frighteningly alert. Dylan realized it, but too late. Don't look at me like that, old man, he said, his voice shaking. I just said softly, I look at the facts, and you don't. I bent down, picked up the torn photo, and gently wiped the dust off Emily's face. In that smile, I seemed to hear my daughter's voice. Dad, don't let anyone erase my name from this house. The wind picked up, knocking a few more photo frames to the ground. Didn't pick them up anymore. I just stood there, silently, watching the pieces of glass reflecting the light. Each ray of light like a fragment of memory breaking apart, but also like a knife, preparing to cut the scales of justice. Dylan turned away, the door slamming shut. It was just me, the drizzle, and the wind in the front yard. I whispered softly, almost like a curse. You just cleaned out everything that belonged to my daughter. Now it's my turn to clean you out of this house. The camera pulls back, revealing Arthur standing in the middle of the yard, the red Texas afternoon light covering his face, his eyes, no longer those of a grieving father, but of a man awakening to the strongest part of himself. And then, his voice rang out, slowly, straight into the hearts of the viewers. If someone trampled on the memory of a deceased loved one for their own convenience, what would you do? A. Stay silent, thinking revenge is useless? B. Stand up, reclaim the truth and self-respect? Or C. Forgive, but never forget? When the night fell after that storm, the house on Willow Creek was strangely quiet, but inside me, everything was boiling, as if the walls were whispering to the blood in my ears. Enough, Arthur. Enough to endure. I walked up to Emily's room. The door was ajar, and there was still the faint scent of her perfume, a mix of oak and lavender. Everything was the same. The white-sheeted bed, the hand-embroidered curtains, and the corner of the table where she used to write little letters to me every birthday. Except that now, everything was covered in dust, as if time had forgotten she ever existed. I sat down and stroked the tabletop. Suddenly, I felt the wooden floor beneath my feet vibrate. A plank came loose. I bent down and used my pocket knife to pry it open. There was a dry click, and what I saw underneath made my heart stop for a beat. An old wooden box, dusty but still sturdy. I pulled it out, wiped the dust off, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Inside, neatly arranged as if Emily had been preparing for this day, a thick file, the seal of Silvercrest Holdings LLC, some notarized papers, and a small cream-colored envelope on which was written, "For Dad, when I'm not here." My hands were shaking so much I almost dropped it. I opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note, Emily's handwriting soft and round. "Dad, I know you still own this house through Silvercrest Holdings. I promised not to tell Dylan because he's too proud. I just want to say thank you for letting us have a home, even behind a curtain of silence. If one day I'm gone, please don't be silent anymore. You don't owe anyone anything, especially someone who despises my love. Emily." I read it over and over again. Each line was like a needle piercing my heart. The room suddenly became brighter, even though I hadn't turned on the lights. Perhaps the moonlight outside was shining directly on the frame of her photo. Her smile still seemed to encourage me. "Dad, I believe in you." I lightly touched the file. The name Silvercrest Holdings LLC, printed boldly on the cover, made all the pieces of the puzzle in my head click together like a complete blueprint. Original deed, date notarized, my signature, Travis County seal from 2001. Everything was legal, clean, and clear. This house had never belonged to Dylan Rhodes, and never would. I leaned back in bed, breathing heavily. For the first time in years, I felt less vulnerable. I was no longer the old man, backed into a corner. I was the one who built this house, who paid the taxes, and the only one who had the right to protect it, as I once protected my daughter. My phone rang. I dialed an old number, one I hadn't called in 10 years. Clara Donovan. A deep professional female voice answered. "Clara Donovan, who is this?" "Arthur Bennett." A pause. "Oh my God, Arthur. How many years has it been? I heard about Emily. My condolences." Thank you, Clara. I called because there's something I need to do right away. I told her briefly, leaving out no details. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Clara said slowly, "Do you still have the original Silvercrest files?" "Right in front of me." "Good. Then bring them to my office tomorrow morning. And Arthur, if you're really ready for this, once you step into it, there's no turning back." I smiled, though tears were still hot on my cheeks. "Clara, I have lived in silence for 7 years. Now, there is only one way forward." I hung up and sat silently, staring at Emily's framed photo. The wind outside gently moved the curtains, tilting the photo slightly, as if it were nodding. I opened the window and took a deep breath of the cool air. Austin was strangely quiet that night, its yellow lights stretching along the Colorado River. But inside me, a wave was rising, no longer of pain, but of strength, of someone who had found a reason to fight again. I retrieved the notice to vacate Dylan had thrown on the kitchen table, carefully folded it, and placed it in the Silvercrest file. Next time, I'll return this, but change the recipient's name. The camera pans slowly. Arthur sits by the bed, the file box open before him, moonlight illuminating the 2001 deed, golden evidence of the coming war. He clutches the key in his hand, his eyes shining in the night. Time point twos. And then, the narrator's deep voice rang out, directed straight at the audience. "If one day, in your hand, is the evidence to reclaim everything, what will you do? A. Keep silent, for fear of the storm. B. Bring the truth to light, even if it means burning the past. Or C. Wait for the right moment, for the traitor to collapse on his own." As dawn broke over the Colorado River, I knew the silent night was over. What I found under Emily's floorboards wasn't just a file. It was the key to reopening the door to justice, and perhaps redemption. That morning, I took the wooden box with me to downtown Austin. The streets were still quiet. Mist hovered above the river, wrapping the skyline in a gray veil. Every step toward that glass tower felt like walking toward the truth I'd buried for too long. Clara Donovan's office was on the 11th floor, overlooking the city's veins of light and glass. When the elevator doors opened, the air smelled faintly of paper and cedar polish. Clara was already there. Gray suit, perfect posture, that kind of calm that could silence chaos. "Are you ready, Arthur?" she asked softly. I looked at her. More than ever. The conference room was long and cold. 8 chairs, a polished black table that reflected the morning light like a mirror to every secret. I sat at the head, where I once belonged, though no one in that room would have believed it. Opposite me sat Dylan Rhodes, his tie sharp, his smirk sharper. He looked at me like I was an inconvenience, a ghost who refused to disappear. Samantha sat beside him, fingers locked together, eyes distant, already sensing that the ground beneath her might soon give way. Officer Mark Hill entered last. His weathered face carried the weight of old memories and unspoken truths. He nodded to me once as if to say, "It's time." Dylan leaned back, arms crossed. "Clara, I don't understand why I'm here. Does this old man think he's in a TV show?" Clara didn't look up. Her fingers slid the latch of the file open, and that single sound, the click, cut through the air like a blade. Mr. Rhodes, she began evenly, today we will be reading the will of Ms. Emily Bennett Rhodes and clarifying ownership regarding 1190 Willow Creek Drive. Dylan scoffed. My property, right? Clara's eyes lifted, cold steel behind warmth. You should listen before you speak. She laid the documents down. Paper rustled softly, the prelude to revelation. According to Travis County property records, the home at 1190 Willow Creek Drive was purchased on May 12, 2001, by Silvercrest Holdings, LLC. Signed agent, Arthur Bennett. The words hung heavy, like thunder before a storm. Dylan's smirk faltered. No way. Emily and I bought that house in 2018. You've got the wrong address. Clara turned a page, slid forward the notarized copy. Here are the originals. 25 years of tax records, insurance payments, and deeds, all in the name of Silvercrest Holdings, founded and still legally active under Arthur Bennett. A hush fell. The hum of the air conditioner sounded like a heartbeat. Samantha looked at Dylan, eyes wide, trembling. You said you bought the house. I don't know anything about this. Sweat gathered on his temple. The perfect suit suddenly too tight. I leaned forward, my voice low but clear. You never asked, Dylan, and Emily never told you, because she didn't want to hurt your pride. A silence you could drown in. Even the clock on the wall seemed to hesitate before ticking again. Officer Hill cleared his throat. I remember. 2001. Arthur poured that foundation himself. I helped him pull the steel wire to measure the base. He slid an old photograph across the table. A younger me, sunburned, proud, holding a hard hat. A house half built, a dream half finished. Clara turned one last page. All maintenance, taxes, insurance, all in Silvercrest's name. No record in yours, Mr. Rhodes. Dylan's jaw tightened. This is a setup. Emily would never hide this from me. Clara paused. Then, with quiet grace, she said, She didn't hide it. She left you a letter. The room froze. The air itself seemed to bend as Clara unfolded the paper and began reading. Her voice softened. Dad, I know you put the house in your name to help us. I promised to keep it secret because Dylan is too proud. But if I'm gone, I want you to have everything back that's yours. I love you, Dad. Emily. The sound of her name cracked something inside me. I bowed my head. The words echoed like a heartbeat I'd almost forgotten. Dylan clenched his fists. Forgery. It proves nothing. Officer Hill stood, voice steady as iron. I witnessed Emily signing that letter. In Clara's office. You can't deny what's real. Samantha stood suddenly, tears burning her cheeks. Dylan, you said that house was yours. Were you lying to me? No, I thought. You thought wrong. She turned and left, her heels striking like the gavel of truth. The room's light shifted. Dylan looked smaller now, swallowed by the sunlight that refused to hide him anymore. Clara closed the file softly. For now, ownership of 1190 Willow Creek Drive remains with Silvercrest Holdings. Further disputes will proceed legally. I didn't smile. I just nodded. Justice didn't need words. The camera closes in, Dylan's eyes full of panic, mine filled with quiet fire. And in that silence I asked, not to him, but to the ones who were watching. If someone robbed you of your honor, And now the truth was in your hands. Would you expose them, watch them collapse, or show mercy and let them live with what they've done? Night had fallen by the time I returned to Willow Creek. The hearing was over. The papers were signed, but the silence waiting inside that house felt like judgment. When I stepped across the threshold, the wood beneath my boots whispered with age. The air smelled of dust and something faintly floral, Emily's perfume. It lingered in the hallway, like a ghost that hadn't yet learned how to leave. Every picture was gone. Every frame on the wall had left behind pale rectangles of memory. I walked through the living room, past the cracked window she once begged me to fix. The moonlight poured through it now, cutting across the room like a blade of silver. And then I saw it. The piano still there, covered in a thin layer of dust, but still standing, like a sentinel of her laughter. My hands trembled when I lifted the cover. One note, then another. The sound echoed weakly, hollow, like grief trying to find a melody. "Dad," she used to say, "you always play like you're hiding something." Maybe she was right. I was hiding everything. I sank into the old couch. The springs groaned. I closed my eyes. The sound of her laughter returned, bright, sudden, unstoppable. The night we danced barefoot in this room after the divorce papers came in. She told me, "We'll start over, you and me. No one can take that away." But they did. I opened my eyes and looked at the empty staircase. The shadows moved, shifting with the passing cars outside. But for a moment, it felt like she was there. Watching. Waiting. The wind pressed against the window, whistling low through the gaps in the frame. Somewhere outside, a dog barked, then fell silent. I whispered into the darkness, "Emily, I got it back. The house, everything. But it doesn't feel like victory." I waited for silence to answer, and it did. On the table beside me lay the envelope Clara had slipped into my hand before I left her office. "Don't open it until you're ready," she'd said. I tore the seal. Inside was another letter, written in Emily's handwriting. Familiar curves, small, careful words. "Dad, if you're reading this, it means Dylan's lies are done. But don't let revenge eat you the way guilt once did. I want you to live again. Build, create. Play that old piano for someone else who needs to hear it. I love you. E." The paper blurred in my hand. I didn't realize I was crying until the ink began to bleed. Outside, the streetlight flickered. I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate. I turned toward the door. Dylan stood there, his face pale, his tie gone, eyes wild, with something between rage and shame. He spoke first. "You happy now, old man? You ruined me." I stood up slowly. "No, Dylan. You ruined yourself." He took a step closer, his hand trembling at his side. "She loved me, you know. Whatever you think, she chose me." I nodded. And I never blamed her for that. Something broke in him then. Not anger, not grief. Something smaller, weaker. The look of a man who finally sees himself without the illusion. He exhaled, shaky, desperate. "I thought she'd tell me. I thought I was enough." I said nothing. The truth didn't need words. Then, quietly, He dropped a small box on the table, the engagement ring he once gave her. I found this in her drawer. She never wore it after the first year. I thought it was because she lost weight. He looked up, eyes red, voice barely holding. It was because she knew I wasn't the man she believed I could be. He turned and walked away. The door clicked shut behind him. I stood there, frozen. The sound of his car engine faded into the night until there was nothing left. Only the ticking clock and the soft hum of the fridge. I sat down again, the ring still gleaming in the half-light. The storm outside began to rise, thunder in the distance, wind rattling the window. And in that storm, I realized justice had come, but peace had not. I pressed my palm against the piano keys once more. A deep note echoed through the house, slow, resonant, filled with the weight of years. For the first time in decades, I wasn't playing for Emily. I was playing for myself. The rain began to fall harder, and as thunder rolled over Willow Creek, the lights flickered, and the piano sang louder. Each note sounded like forgiveness trying to reach me through the storm. I whispered into the dark, "If this is what you wanted, Emily, I'll try." The camera pulls back. The old man alone in the half-lit room, the rain falling harder, piano echoing into the night. The melody rises, then fades into silence. And over it, a single line, deep, steady, final. Sometimes, revenge gives you back what you lost. But sometimes, it only shows you how empty the victory really is. It was 2 weeks later when Officer Mark Hill came to see me. The rain had stopped that morning, leaving the streets of Austin glazed in silver. He stood at my porch, hat in his hands, eyes heavy with something that wasn't just duty. "Arthur," he said quietly, "you might want to see this." He handed me a brown envelope. Inside was a photo. Emily's car, taken the night of the crash. I'd seen it before. But now the details were different. The angle, the timestamp, the brake lights. "Why are you showing me this again?" I asked. Mark hesitated. There was something off about that night. The crash report, it wasn't complete. I stared at him, trying to read the truth behind his words. He continued. "The night Emily died, the car's black box showed a system override. Her brakes were disabled for 7 seconds before impact." My breath caught. "Disabled? How?" Mark looked away, his voice dropping low. The mechanic listed under the repair log was Dylan Rhodes. The world tilted. For a moment, all I could hear was the sound of my pulse pounding in my ears. Mark went on. He signed the maintenance form 2 weeks before the accident. Said he replaced the ABS module. But the forensic guys found evidence that the connector had been tampered with, manually. I closed my eyes. My voice came out low, almost breaking. So it wasn't an accident. Mark didn't answer. He just nodded, once, and looked at the ground. That night, I sat in the dark again, the envelope on the table, untouched. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Outside, the wind scraped against the windows like whispers from another world. I picked up Emily's letter again, the one that told me to live. But now, it read like a plea. Live, so you can see the truth. In my mind, I could hear her voice again. Dad. Don't let revenge eat you. But revenge had already walked into my house. It was sitting in my chair, breathing my air. At midnight, I drove out to the garage where Dylan used to work. The lights were off, but the scent of oil and burnt metal lingered. The rain from the day had turned the floor slick. In the corner I saw it, an old workbench, and on it, a small black box, the kind you'd only find in diagnostic kits. Inside, a note. You wanted the truth. Here it is. I pressed play on the small recorder inside. Emily's voice. Shaky, soft, but still her. Dylan, if something happens to me, Dad will know. You can't hide this forever. Then silence. Then a door slam. Then Dylan's voice, low, trembling, angry. You shouldn't have looked through my things, Emily. I told you to trust me. The recording ended there. I stood in the dark, unable to move, unable to breathe. For the first time in years, I wasn't angry. I was hollow. The kind of hollow that comes after the truth, when there's nothing left to burn. Dawn broke over the Colorado hills like an old wound reopening, slow, pale, and quiet. The sky carried that color between ash and gold, the kind that never promises warmth. I stood by the grave, coat heavy with morning dew, fingers numb around the flowers I'd brought, but couldn't quite place down yet. Emily's name was carved shallowly into the stone, small, neat, like she never wanted to take up too much space in the world. The wind swept through the fields, whispering across the grass. It carried the faintest smell of pine and cold iron, the scent of rain long gone. Behind me, I heard the crunch of boots. Clara. She didn't speak at first. She never did when she wasn't sure whether words could help. She stood beside me, her breath visible in the morning chill. You got my message? She asked finally. I nodded, still looking at the headstone. Mark told me everything. Her voice softened, but the weight remained. The DA reopened the case this morning. Dylan's being questioned. There's enough evidence this time. The tampered brake system, the black box recording, the note you found. He won't walk away from this one. The silence that followed felt heavier than any verdict. I stared at the ground, the soil that had once been soft enough to bury a child's laughter, now holding her forever. You did it, Arthur, Clara said quietly. You got justice. I let out a breath that sounded like a laugh, but wasn't. Justice, I said. That word feels like rust in my mouth. She looked at me, unsure whether to argue or agree. You're free now, she whispered. I shook my head slowly. No, Clara. Justice doesn't bring her back. It only proves how far gone she really is. The wind picked up, sweeping through the grass like a sigh. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, Clara reached into her coat pocket and placed a folded piece of paper beside the flowers. She wanted you to have this too, she said. And then she turned and walked away. When she was gone, I knelt down and unfolded the note. It wasn't a letter this time. No words of forgiveness or hope. Just a single sheet of music, drawn by hand in Emily's delicate handwriting. The same melody I used to play when she was a child, our song. At the top, she'd written one line. Play this when you're ready to forgive. The words blurred before I realized my eyes were wet. I smiled, faintly, brokenly. Somewhere deep inside, something small loosened, but not enough to let go. That night, The house was quiet again. Too quiet. The kind of silence that feels alive, like the walls are listening. The piano stood in the corner. Black lacquer faded, one leg uneven, keys yellowed with age, but it was still there. Still waiting. I lit the lamp. The warm light spread slowly across the room, catching the dust in the air. The same room where Emily had once spun barefoot on the rug, laughing. The same room where her mother had once stood in the doorway, smiling, before everything fell apart. I sat down before the piano. My fingers hovered above the keys. For a moment, I didn't play. I just listened to the faint hum of the house, the ticking clock, the whisper of rain against glass. Then I began. The melody came slow, hesitant, fractured, like an old man trying to remember how to pray. I played through the first line of her song, then stopped. The silence afterward felt like a cliff. I could almost hear her voice behind me, gentle and amused. "Dad, slower. You're rushing it again." I smiled through the ache. "You always said that," I whispered, and then I played again. This time it felt different. The notes weren't just sound, they were pieces of her. As I played, the wind pressed against the old window, the house seeming to breathe with me. And in that fragile piece, I realized something terrible and true. Revenge hadn't freed me. It had finished me. For all the justice, all the rage, all the nights replaying what he did, I was still here, alone in this house, chasing echoes. The truth didn't bring closure. It brought clarity. Emily was gone. Dylan would face his punishment. And I was the only one left to carry both their ghosts. Hours must have passed. The rain returned, light and steady, tapping against the glass like distant applause. The clock read 2:47 a.m. I stopped playing, letting the final note hang in the air. It trembled for a long time, almost alive. Then, nothing. Just the sound of the rain. I looked down at the piano. The key I'd struck last, middle C, still quivered. I pressed my palm against it. The vibration slowed, then faded. In that silence, I finally said what I hadn't since the night she died. "Emily," I whispered, "I'm sorry I couldn't save you. And I'm sorry that I became everything you were afraid I would." The words broke something in me. But in the breaking, there was relief. Like the house had finally let go of a storm it had been holding for years. The lamp flickered once, then again. Outside, thunder rolled over the hills, slow, distant. I stood up, every joint aching with the weight of time. Looked around the room, the photos gone, the couch empty, the smell of rain seeping through the cracks. And for a moment, a single heartbeat, I thought I saw her. Just a shadow in the doorway, barefoot, smiling. But when I blinked, it was only light from the passing cars outside. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I walked to the window, watching the rain trace slow rivers down the glass. The world went on, indifferent and quiet. Behind me, the piano sat in stillness, but the melody still lived, faint and persistent, inside my chest. I turned off the lamp. The room fell into shadow, except for the pale wash of moonlight spilling across the keys. I placed Emily's sheet music on the stand, smoothed it flat, and softly, I said the words she wrote to me, Play this when you're ready to forgive. I closed my eyes. My fingers found their place again. And this time, I played. Not for her, not for Dylan, but for the silence itself, for everything I could never say out loud. The melody rose and fell like breath, fragile but alive. Each note shimmered, echoing off the empty walls, filling the house with something almost human again, and somewhere between the notes, between grief and forgiveness, I heard her laughter. Not as a ghost, not as pain, just memory. It faded with the song, until all that was left was the faint hum of the final key trembling in the dark. I whispered into the stillness, "If this is what you wanted, Emily, I'll try." Some houses hold memories, others hold ghosts, but this one held both, until I learned the difference. The screen fades to black, the faint sound of rain, soft, endless, forgiving.